talking about. And rather than start at the beginning as we've always been doing, let's start at the end with the narrative perspective. Groups D and H. Where are my D and H groups? H? All right, we'll start with it. Where's D? Okay, hands, good. We'll start with H since the keyboard is right there next to you. So go ahead and type your claim. Shh, pay attention. While they're typing their claim, I have some observations to make. As I was walking around yesterday talking to groups about writing 3, I find myself repeating a lot of the same comments and observations about the concepts that I've talked about both in small group session and in open session over the last couple weeks, which tells me something very clearly, that you are paying rapt attention to the second day discussion when it pertains to your group. But when it doesn't pertain to your group, some of you are just floating away. So even though you are good honor students and you wouldn't put your head down and you wouldn't look like you weren't paying attention, it's obvious from the questions you're asking me that some of you are not paying attention when it's not your group's discussion. You must pay attention to all of it. Because if somebody's dealing with narrative perspective and you haven't dealt with it yet, you are learning something about how to write a future writing. So your 4th writing should be your best because you should have been privy to 3 group discussions on that concept. Your 1st one should be your rockiest. But some of you, each one is like a new blank slate for writing. So make sure you're paying attention to and possibly even taking notes on other writing development, regardless of whether or not you will write on it for that week, because that will help you learn the concept. Okay. Let's see what we can do. We'll talk about that in a moment. Let's see. In Without Wood, Tan uses the perspective of Rose to show her transition from being without wood to acquiring wood. Yes, I think that without explanation, it seems to me like she's gathering wood for a fire, right? At one point she has none, and the other point she does have some. So let's talk about the character qualities that indicates. So being without wood, give me an adjective to refer to character. Okay. To being indecisive regarding what? Give me some of your evidence, Michael, that you're talking about.
How like she can't decide like whether or not to like sign the divorce papers or like be moved from her house.
Okay, so she seems pretty weak regarding the divorce at first. Ted seems to be steamrolling over her, and okay, that's good. So to show her transition from being, insert something like passive, weak, victimized, something like that. And then if you've got victimized, what would be a contrary characterization? Predator? I'm not sure that she goes that far. I think that's a little... okay, being passive to being aggressive?
Yeah.
Aggressive might be good. Because I think that movement with the hiring the lawyer at the end and the comment about the garden and so on are aggressive moves. Good. So now we're a little bit clearer. Tan used the perspective of Rose to show her transition from being passive to aggressive. Biggest weakness that I've noticed in writing about this narrative perspective and the narrative shift is not your understanding of the effect. I think all of you are critical enough readers that you understand when she's passive, when she's aggressive, and you can probably find some evidence on both sides of that. But the question is, how does the perspective do that? How does Rose's perspective help me as a reader understand her transition? Let's start with the transition. We've got passive to aggressive. Give me an example of passive and give me an example of aggressive. Where's my D group? All right, give me an example of passive action from passive action. That's contradictory. Give me an example of passivity from Rose. How does she seem to act in such a way that she's a pushover? I know you were going with a slightly different claim, but you don't have to have a page number. Just, can you remember anything from the story where she seems to be a pushover?
Oh, is she the one? Oh, no.
Can somebody help him out? In that group or outside that group? Sydney? Right. Oh, that was previous when he called her and said he wanted a divorce. That was the part 2 Rose chapter. That's a different story. That's Lena, right?
Yeah.
That's Lena who's paying for ice cream that she would vomit if she ate it. Yes?
Would it be like the part, I think it was like not in this section, but like it was like when they were like talking about like where to go to dinner and stuff, and she just like say you choose.
Right, and that was in a previous book. So indecision on trivial matters like where to go to dinner. Is there anything in this story though? Sydney?
Kind of passive how it was where he sent her the paper and she was just like sign here, here's money.
Correct.
Do it.
So it's passive on her part when she first, and she leans toward accepting the papers that he sent. So acceptance of the check, acceptance of papers. All right? Show some aggressiveness at a Rose. Guys, like pulling teeth. If you're reading this carefully, you should be able to come up with these answers. I'm not asking for nitpicky little details. Come on, Sydney.
When he came over and they were in the garden, she was like, no, I can't come.
Give me another aggressive action. Call it out.
She didn't sign it.
Did not sign. Hired a lawyer. Thank you. And of course, symbolically, you could talk about how she decided not to maintain the garden. Great. We've got this. Works well enough. How does perspective help me understand the movement from here to here? Yeah, go ahead, Julianne.
Because at the end it says, the power of my words is that strong, like she finally realized that she can stand up to him if no one else is really be able to.
That's true, but he sees that externally too, right? Because he's stricken with fear. So how does seeing it from her eyes give us a unique perspective on it? You're on the right track, Julianne. You're getting there, but I think I need just a little bit more. Kristen.
I don't know, this could be something completely different, but is it because like her perspective, it allows readers to like see inside her head and get a more like detailed view of it?
Sure, but what details do we get that we wouldn't get if we were Ted?
Like her thoughts and what her thought process and like what she thinks of herself.
She gives us justification for why. Ted doesn't understand why. Ted's clueless. Ted is mired in his own very rational, very masculine approach to the divorce, and he doesn't understand why things are changing. Why she would stand up and say, no, I'm keeping the house, I'm not signing papers. We understand why. Why do we understand? Jeez. Why do we understand? Because we're in her head, because we see her through her perspective, correct. Because we were there with her when she spent 3 days in bed in a depressive funk. Because we were there with her when she was noting the crazy change in Penn. Because we're privy to all of that. Because we were there with her when her assumption that Ted's not cheating on me was proven false. Because we felt that through her mind. We understand her experience. So this shift to here at the end of this story makes complete sense to us, makes no sense to Ted. And that, there, if you do that, you're bringing perspective into it. You're bringing perspective into it, and then you can integrate and satisfy that integration criterion that I'm always asking for. And that means I want to see how this evidence links not only to the claim's effect, but the claim's device. And sometimes I see some weakness in writing where you guys are doing a really good job in linking to the effect, but not quite so good in linking to the device. Group D, you were going for something a little bit different, I believe. Could you just read for me your claim?
And without wood, man uses Rose's perspective to convey the pain caused by the divorce that only Rose can understand.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And once again, it's very similar to what we're talking about here. There's a slight difference in the effect. So instead of looking at a passive to aggressive shift, all you're doing is amassing details that speak to pain. And then you're claiming quite accurately that Ted wouldn't have access to that because a lot of this is interior thoughts that she doesn't reveal. Her mother wouldn't have access to it unless her mother is using some sort of intuition, which she might. So it's similar to what we're doing here. Good, good.